Hey everyone, welcome to my channel and also the first episode of TalkShop. These videos are recorded over on Twitch TV/JAndersonCAD, which you will find a link to in the show notes. Also, you will find links to Justin Parnell's various projects that he is working on. Please go check them out. This is really cool. This is a show that's really to pull the curtain back, bring the brewers forward, and kind of talk shop on why people do certain things. Why do they think a certain way? I'm super excited to do these. I'm looking forward to having other people come on and break through their thought process with me. Please go check out Justin's stuff. Feel free to hop on over to Twitch and give me a follow. Um, we'll be trying to do these every Fridays. You can also find me over on Twitter. Till then, love that you all are dropping by and get ready to check out this video. First episode of Talk Shop, and we happen to be with. I feel extremely lucked down saying that first episode we're doing with Justin Parnell. Hey,
First
thanks for coming on.
episode, first
Episode.
one. I
First
can't
one.
believe it, man. Yeah, I would. I don't know. I might have declined if I knew I was going to be the first one, just to, you know, let us get our feet wet. But we're in. We're doing it. First episode. Talk shop. Let's talk about
Um,
Meren.
um, yeah. I guess to for people who are wondering what this is, so Talk Shop was an idea that was brewed. Essentially, we Magic players like to do everything their own personal ways. Some people are more when they're coming up with a deck, they find one card, they build around it a ton. Other people have a formula that they fill out, and that may work for some people, may not work for others. I was trying to find people who think very differently that I've held in high regards through at least my coming up in Commander, and the first person I had to shoot out to was you. Commander Versus, I would say the expert, Clan Neltoth.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, I feel honored that you feel that way. I certainly have cast my fair of black and or black green spells in my time, so I do at least feel qualified. I'll say that.
Um, so when you're sitting down and, I do all my stuff in Notepad, so it doesn't look as excitingly. Um,
Well, you say that. You say that. Wait till you get to my answer.
when you sit down and you're gonna go to start brewing your first deck, uh, for someone like me who surprisingly I actually have your Yahini deck right now in my box.
Yeah,
Um,
I got mine right back here.
I've never played Meren. I don't know how I skipped over it. I like attrition-y, uh, slower, grindier games, and I think I just um, as me growing up as a Magic player, I played against a lot of Meren when I first started playing, and I've been grave packed into the dirt.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, but when you start off, do you just grab a bunch of cards? Where's your starting place?
So I'll kind of answer this question in a couple different ways because
Sure.
it's, as I'm sure you can imagine, it's not quite as straightforward.
Forward.
Yeah. So for Marin, I kind of want. This is something that you had asked me, and I'm like, well, we could talk about this. I kind of want to address this now
Yeah.
before we get to uh, the how do I go about building a deck, because for some commanders it's slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
So a question that we were talking about is Marin a boogeyman?
Yeah.
Is the commander itself one that when you pull it out and you throw it on the table, people go, "Oh, okay." I think that so Marin came out 6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
approximately, and I think that when Marin came out, and for the first 3 or 4 years, I think that that was the case. I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we've kind of moved away from Marin being a boogeyman status, only because so many other things have come out that are like more like clearly degenerate or more powerful. Uh,
More pushed.
more pushed for sure. Yeah, because ultimately Meren is like a very efficient creature to have as your commander, uh, and that efficiency carries a lot of weight for what it allows you to do in a deck. Because there's Meren in itself is the failsafe for the entire deck, but it's not as powerful as something um, like Corvold, which I actually
Yeah.
have a Corvold deck. I don't have a Meren deck right now. I'll get to that. This is actually kind of a reason why is when Corvold came out, Meren was still the boogeyman. It was
Mm-hmm.
still when I played my Meren deck. When I were to put it out, people would just be like, "Oh, we have to kill Parnell because this is just, we're going to lose to Meren." So my win percentage with that deck was the lowest of any deck I ever played. And it's not because of the power of the deck or my ability to pilot it. I just got focused. I've played Meren 3 times on Commander Versus. One was the pre-constructed deck in 2015, where the first time anyone had played it.
Mm-hmm.
I easily won that game, and then played it 2 other times. Did not come close to winning either of those. And then when I had it as a personal deck, probably won like 2 out of 12 times. So, but it's because of that reason, because that's kind of what it's people assumed at the time. And now there's just more powerful things like Corvold, like Sir Conrad,
Sir Conrad.
uh, which is not black and green, but like it does a lot of the same things as Baron is doing. It's moving cards from one zone to the other very quickly. So I think in general, for most people, I say for most people, for almost everyone, the answer is going to be no. I think for me, if I pulled out a Meren deck, people would still consider it a boogeyman because because I've built this association of me alongside this card. But in general, I don't think it is.
Okay.
But when you have boogeyman type commanders, and we'll just put Meren in this category for you know
Yeah.
the thought process. Um, you have to purposefully kind of take the power level down
Yep.
from what it might be, and you almost have to like earn people's trust by losing with a worse version of that deck before you get to the point where you can like play a deck that has like a boogeyman commander, but you're not doing those type of things with it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm going to brew a deck, that's kind of the first thing is, you know, I'm deciding on the power level of the deck, and that's going to really inform the rest of my decisions, and that's going to like waver like as I'm going through the whatever process that I come to, because ultimately I have three I kind of have three options for processes for me building a deck.
Okay.
And you were saying that you build a deck in Notepad. 100 times out of 100, I build a deck in Google Documents or Microsoft Excel every single time,
Huh.
just with text.
Interesting.
All of my commander decks are literally just in spreadsheets. Um, So, and this is how I've always done it. This is how I've like always like stored my cubes. Like any decks that I've done, like when I was younger, it was always Excel before Google Docs existed. But now
Mm-hmm.
Google Docs is a little bit easier if I'm on different devices to always access it. So, yeah, that's how for anything for most things in my life, but especially like anything magic related, it's going to be in a spreadsheet.
Yeah. I've always done Notepad because I would type out like my like 5 questions of like what is the deck doing?
Hmm.
How am I paying for my spells? How am I getting to my spells? Am I protecting or getting my spells faster? And then I went through and I filled them out with cards underneath it.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
the deck naturally built itself.
yeah. So you're identifying like sections of the deck, filling out those sections, and seeing how those things come together, and then
Yep.
kind of finalizing the deck as a whole. So I have 3 ways that I build decks, and they're all a little bit different.
Well,
And they all start with like three. It's like 3 different questions. I'm gonna kind of go through these questions.
all right.
And this is something I've had to develop because I built a lot of decks for Commander Versus. Oh, like 250 decks for Commander Versus, along with all the personal decks I've played. So I
Mm-hmm.
ask myself 3 questions now. The first question, and I think this is the question that the most people ask themselves, whether they realize it or not, is there a commander that I want to build? Like, is there a legendary creature? I'm sure I have one in front of me. I'm like, oh, I really want to. I have okay pre-con. I want to build Willow Dusk Essence Seer,
Sure.
right? So that is the. I think that's the most. This is the most common thing for people because they get a commander they want and they build the deck from there. Um, this is the most general, but I think as you're kind of going down, it becomes you can sometimes get too laser focused on the commander itself, and you might limit some of your choices or creativity based on that. Because a lot of times, unless it's a very new card, you're going to already have an idea of exactly what you want to do, unless you've have a great magic knowledge or a um, or are a huge like researcher for things you could do in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not a this is not a bad thing. Like I said,
No.
this is the most common way, but it can sometimes narrow your vision. And I'll come back to this one a little. So that's question one. Question two is, do I have a deck theme that I want, regardless of the commander? Uh, like, is there a thing that I want to do with my deck? So, a couple of years ago, I was building a new deck for myself, and this is kind of my go-to story for this. Is I was like, I want to build a Grixis Artifacts Planeswalker deck, a deck that cared about uh, artifacts and the Grixis colors, and was also like, as I started building it, I was like, well, I want it to be Planeswalker focused too, because there's a lot of Planeswalker that actually care about artifacts in mostly blue and red, but also there's a handful of black ones because of the Tezzerets.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't. I built the entire deck, 100% of the deck. Uh, probably about 90% of the deck before I decided on what my commander was going to be. I didn't decide that until the very end. I just wanted the deck to do this theme, that I wanted. Uh, and then I was like, well, within what I have, what commander fits the best? And
Uh,
this is something that I've done a lot on Commander Versus because I'm trying to explore in this very particular area, and then whatever commander kind of works with that, that's what's going to do it. But the deck isn't necessarily about the commander; it's more about the 99. Uh, so that happens a decent amount of the time. Probably it's still less frequent than the start with your commander. And then the third thing, which is the least frequent, but is I think is really an important facet for people to think about. Is there a very particular thing that I'm trying to do when I'm playing this deck? Like, am I trying to put together this moment or this thing that happens? And generally, this is going to be for like lower powered level decks, because higher powered level decks, you could usually those things are like, I'm going to combo with these two
yeah.
cards, that's a little more straightforward. An example I have is several years ago we were doing hidden rolls on Commander Versus, and I got the hidden roll deal lethal damage with Puppet Conjurer.
Oh yeah.
And so the thing that I was trying to do is I needed to deal lethal damage with Puppet Conjurer, and I realized actually um, someone had told me, uh, just a viewer was like, hey, you can deal lethal damage to Puppet Conjurer if you have Spy Kit, because it makes everything Puppet Conjurer. So the deck was about 100% of the deck was about making sure I could get into a position to win with a creature equipped with Spy Kit. That was what the deck. It didn't matter what else I was doing. Every single card in the deck was like going to an apex of that moment or that thing that I was trying to do. Um, I will note that this method not only dictates deck building, which it of course does, but it also is the method that dictates how you play the deck as
Mm-hmm.
well. Because generally, when you're like have a deck that's trying to do one particular thing, the decisions that you make and the lines that you take in the deck are going to be wildly different than if you're just drawing 7 cards, drawing a card every turn, and just kind of playing your deck with the cards you draw.
Yeah,
So
you'll probably have like more tutors, more established lines.
yeah,
I
yeah,
guess like an
yeah.
extreme example of this is like when you're talking about like, oh, your higher power level, like your Thassa's Oracle stuff, where it's like, cool, I tutor, resolve the thing, uh, play demonic consultation. You see things like that where it's like, and
Hmm.
that's to the very extreme of
Yes,
it.
yeah. Yeah,
where the
generally the higher power level you get, you can kind of combine all of these
yep.
things. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, so the am I doing trying to do a particular thing does often involve a lot of tutors, usually like an overabundance,
Hmm.
and then the power level kind of waxes and wanes based on what the thing is that you're trying to do. Sometimes it could be Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation, where you have two cards that will just win you the game on their own, or Painter Servant Grindstone,
Painter
etc.
Servant Grandstone.
Yeah.
Another quick example for everyone is like I have a Zur the Enchanter list that the whole idea, it's a cycling deck that is trying to get crystalline resonance out on the field
There you go. Perfect example.
and do multiple things with swinging, getting copy artifacts, having multiple crystalline resonances, turning them
Yeah.
into all sorts of tomfoolery.
Yeah,
Uh,
just full on nonsense.
multiple Zers, like you have Sakashima out there, you have six
Yeah.
Zers go to town. But yeah, so that's an idea of taking like a concept and building backwards to it. So you'll probably have a
Mhm.
lot more tutors. I have a tutor in the command zone. You can see other similar things like Golos for certain lands decks, etc.
Yeah. So when I visualize these, and this is gonna probably this is it might not make sense for everyone, but I think of uh, the first option where is there a commander I want to build to where there's a box, and the box is the deck that you're trying to fill with cards. And I don't mean
Mm-hmm.
like a actual deck box, like a square.
Yep.
And the dot in the middle is the commander, and all the arrows are pointing out to try to fill up that box
Box.
from the middle. The second option, what's the theme? That's the outside of the box, and then the arrows are pointing into the middle, and eventually, when you get there, you're going to figure out your commander.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, the circle's in the middle. There's no box, and it's just a spiral that continues to go around the thing that you're trying to do.
Just this
So,
leads to this. The final one seems very much like the person sitting there with like all the strings and the cork board, and it's just like, well, this will go to this,
exactly.
and this goes to this, and this goes to this, and
Yes, exactly.
all leads to this. I told you, is they're circling the combo in the center of the table.
Yep. So those are kind of like those are my three different angles that I take when I like build a deck. And those, there's a lot of crossover because you still want to make sure. I always make sure I'm like, do I have the requisite number of lands? Do I have enough fast mana? Do I have enough interaction? Am I able to interact with every like permanent type that I'm able to? Am I able to interact with like the graveyard if I'm able to? And obviously, different colors do these things at a different rate.
Of course.
But I try to make sure that is one of my personal decks anyway. Sometimes a commander versus I'll skimp on a couple of these just for the purpose of the deck itself. But my personal decks, if I can interact with one of those zones or card types, I'm gonna make sure that I can at least like with one card in my deck. It's harder for a black deck, mono black deck, to interact with artifacts, but I'm going to make sure that I have like a couple of things that can interact with artifacts or enchantments.
All right. Yeah, I can definitely see, especially like I've noticed that like even in like mono black where it's like dealing with like artifacts or enchantments, though with some newer cards we've gone has gone a little better.
Yep.
Um, you always want to have a little bit. You don't want to be like, well, this is someone else's problem.
Yeah, because that's how it becomes your problem at the end of the game when it's you and that other player, and you're like, all right, I'll be able to handle everything, and they're like, all right, I'm going to play this Mirari's Wake, and you're like, uh-oh,
Uh oh,
can't interact with that card.
I'm gonna play this aura shards, and you're sitting across from it like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way. Don't ever assume it's going to be someone else's problem. And you can like in the beginning of the game, if you know your interaction is limited, like if I have so like in my mono black handy deck, uh I have Meteor Golem and I have Ugin the Ineffable.
mhm,
Meteor Golem is a one that I can, recur pretty easily in that deck.
yeah,
But I don't have many, so I'm like, I really like if three other players are still in this game and something needs to go, I'm gonna really try to encourage someone else to do it. It's more of a break class in case of emergency, but I want to be able to break that glass.
Mm-hmm.
when the emergency comes, when it is down to me to be able to deal with a thing. So yeah. Yeah, same goes with not only just permanent, but also graveyards too. As someone that, um, I mean, maybe there's one of my decks that doesn't interact with the graveyard in a meaningful way, but all the rest do. That's just the thing that I like to do in Commander.
I mean, it's a second
Uh,
hand.
yeah, oftentimes more powerful than your actual hand.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, I mean that's the thing I think people forget, or maybe not forget. They always think that they have covered, and they generally don't have covered as much as they think that they do. But again, I'm usually the one that benefits from it, so y'all do what you want. Don't play your graveyard hate. I don't care. Do whatever you're gonna do.
You can leave your Graph Digger's cages at home.
Yeah, exactly. So, so when we get into these, uh, generally there is a portion with brewing and deck building where uh, you're gonna you filled out the cards that you know off the top of your head. Because usually when you want to make a commander deck, you have cards or a group of cards in mind, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna put these down. But then, in most cases, you're gonna get to a point where you need to kind of do the research phase, which I think most people that are building decks or brewing decks are you're gonna get to that in various speeds. Sometimes it's immediately. There's definitely been decks where I've kind of gone jumped in the research phase. Maybe it's we're like doing a very specific theme and it's not something I might have built on my own. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start researching. So my method has just as long as I can remember. It used to be magiccards.info, but now it's Scryfall. I am a very, very, very like heavy Scryfall user.
It's one of
So
my.
this is go ahead.
I was about to say it's one of my like most recent links to like click on.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. I'll put it this way: I use Scryfall so much that when I type S, it will go to Scryfall. And you're probably saying, "Well, sure, that's the case for most Magic players," but I'm the purchasing manager at Star City Games. That also starts with S.
yes.
So I visit that site quite a bit, but I apparently visit Scryfall more. So Uh, so Scryfall, the main, so the that this is my main source of research. This is the first thing that I do, and the longest thing that I do. Um, and this can go for anything. So I'm going to search like I'm a big like basically just right from the advanced search. I'm going to search like keywords or creature types or card types or specific lines of text is a big one. I've typed the word sacrifice in for a hundred different decks. Um, and fortunately, when you go to at the very top, when you go to the text search,
Mm-hmm.
you can you can put in parts of these like you could put uh, like graveyard, return, battlefield, and then it's going to bring everything that's going to like return something from the battlefield, or like sacrifice land or sacrifice creature. Because you don't have to put the whole phrase; it'll kind of it'll search it for you.
It'll parse it out.
Uh, it'll parse it out. Yeah. So this is going to bring up a, a million cards, but all of these are going to be things that do this effect. And then of course, the good thing about Scryfall is it actually lets you commander search it, so you can select colors. And you're like, all right, well, my deck's going to be Grixis color, or maybe my deck is going to be Selesnya color because I'm feeling like I want to fight an uphill battle. Um, so I select green and white in the commander colors, and then do that search because I don't know whatever my commander is cares about returning stuff from the graveyard to the battlefield. Um, and then you start narrowing it down, and then from there you're like you can what I often like to do is like grab phrases from cards,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then put those back into the search, and then see all of the light cards that do that thing. Um, one of my favorite things about Scryfall, other than its incredible searching, is it returns results incredibly fast.
Yeah.
So when I'm like searching like a bunch of different things, it takes the least amount of my time, and for someone that builds a lot of decks, that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm Scryfall all the way.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's very immediate. It's very user friendly.
Yes.
For anybody who's like not experienced Scryfall, so like for example, flip cards, you can just click on them, they flip them over so you can see backsides.
Hmm.
It most even if it's an older card, it I believe still will recognize Oracle text. Um,
Yes. Yes, it will. It actually only recognizes Oracle
yeah.
text unless you tell it not to, which
Um,
which is good. Yeah, well, actually, yeah, you can actually see it in the top. It actually says Oracle. So it defaults to the Oracle text on the card
oh
when you
yeah,
do that text search.
Oracle here, Oracle.
Yeah, yeah. So it is. It's really great. I could literally. I mean, I could probably talk for an hour about Scryfall, honestly. Um, but it is it's incredibly powerful. It lets you just like literally I would just go in and like put in a keyword, or I'm like I want to do like +1/+1 counters, or I want to search for every zombie, or blah blah blah. And you know, it's the quickest way to do that. And for me, I like to get these big bundles of data and then parse through it myself,
Hmm.
because this is the way. Because we will segue into something that I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about. This is the way that you aren't going to eliminate any potential options. There's nothing that Scryfall will miss as long as you are searching appropriately. Um, and that's a really valuable tool when you are trying to get very creative with whatever deck you're building, because there are other websites that make suggestions or are based on like community feedback
Hmm.
uh, that are going to eliminate some of those cards. And that actually is the reason I like Scryfall the most, because it does not homogenize anything. Doesn't matter how many people are playing something or how many people have put a card in a deck.
Yep.
It's going to be pure results. It's not going to ask a question about what anyone else is doing. This is just going to say, yes, this is the thing that you're looking for. Do whatever you want with this data, um, which is again, I feel the most useful to me.
Yep.
Now, the thing that people are, like I said, are probably saying is, well, what about EDHREC?
Hmm.
I do like EDHREC a lot, and I actually think that it's a very good tool, but I use it in a slightly different way, probably than I'd probably say the majority of people. For the reason that I like Scryfall is sometimes get slightly concerned about EDHREC because it actually does the opposite. It works towards homogenization, because you are taking all of this data for people that are looking at decks on EDHREC, a deck with those light cards, submitting the deck on EDHREC, and then it's this cycle that slowly like takes away these fringe cards and really focuses on creating a singularly homogenized deck for each commander. Now, there are a couple of benefits to this. One, let's say I'm building a deck and
Hmm.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like this happens often when I'm playing like a combo deck, or like when I'm building like about around a combo deck, and I'm like, my brain generally doesn't work in that way. So I want to go see what everyone else is doing, because I literally I need to get a start from somewhere.
I need a
EDHREC is great
foothold.
for that.
Like,
Yes, I need to get I just need to get started. EDHREC is great for that. Um, it's also great for finding effects that are similar to other effects that might have different wording, because that is obviously where
yeah.
Scryfall is difficult. Uh, it's going to tell you the cards that say this, but maybe you want a card that does the same thing but says it in a different way.
Like
So
if you're a newer player and you just search landfall, you're gonna find all the cards that have landfall on them. But
yeah,
before
you're going to
landfall
miss
was a
Tireless
forgettable
Tracker.
word or other effects.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So even something like as simple as like I want to, what are other cards like Cultivate? And maybe there's a couple that like are different words, or like put a land from your hand on the battlefield.
Hmm.
Like if you search for Cultivate or Rampant Growth, you might miss Explore
Explore.
and Growth Spiral.
Yep.
So EDHREC is really great for that, because then you can go and, all right, I'm going to type in Cultivate, and then it's going to bring up cards like, oh, these are cards that are found in similar decks, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's this is a group of cards that I'm looking for. So it's really great for that. And then the last thing, even though I don't, and it's not that I just like EDHREC.
Hmm.
I actually do like it a lot. Like I said, I just use it slightly differently. Almost every single time before I submit a deck for Commander Versus, I will type in the commander on EDHREC, load the deck up, because I often will miss obvious. There are always like one obvious
There's a
card that
card.
I missed,
Mm-hmm.
and usually that's going to be in that list. So I go through. I will always try to build it on my own because, like I said, that homogenization is really important to me, and I want to try to make decks that feel like Parnell decks.
Yeah.
So, but what comes of that sometimes is I will just miss something, and generally, if it's an obvious thing, EDH Rake is never going to miss it. So I'll load up the commander, scroll down, be like, is there anything in here that I'm seeing that I want that I don't have? And often, I would say most of the time, I find like one between 1 and 2 cards, and I'm like, yep, definitely should have that one. Didn't think about it. So
Yeah.
that is kind of my process, like in a macro sense.
It's a like it's definitely good to have those fail safes. I can definitely see that because I mean, for me as a brewer, I'm very similar. Where it's like, I want to when I'm brewing, I just go down rabbit holes of looking up cards, and it's like this card leads me down to these cards, and I learn about cards I didn't even know existed. And I use a lot of Scryfall for that.
Hmm.
Um, like when building Zur, it's like cycling 3-drop enchantments. What do I hit?
Yeah,
Um, and that's when I like saw Crystalline Resonance. I'm like, what does this card say? And I read it like 3 times because you learn something new every time you read it.
yeah,
Um, and if I went to, because I did after I built the deck, look at EDHREC, and of course the first thing that pops up is like Necropotence, this.
yeah,
And I could look at those and be like, for what I'm trying to do, I really don't need this. But I've already
yeah,
made those decisions. Um, so I can definitely see like, I definitely feel where you're coming from because it allows you to like figure out more you, and every decision especially feels more valid. But it's nice to be able to go back and be like I forgot Oblivion Ring,
yep.
because there's tons of similar effects of that, and I was just like,
Hmm.
I'm missing one more piece of interaction. Oh, O Ring's a thing. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely true. And it's always something like that. It's always like a super obvious thing that I'm like, oh yeah, of course this card makes sense, but I wasn't thinking about like this one specific card or this like this effect that I just passed over. So yeah, I think having a group of tools when you're doing deck building, I think is really important because I mean, let's face it, at this point but I would say almost every Magic player has access to the internet, and
Mm-hmm.
these are tools everyone should have access to. And I think the better you learn to utilize them, the better you will get at building decks because not because they're like building the deck for you, but because they are kind of allowing you to access uh, the part of the brain that you might not know in a Magic sense. You might know what you want, but you don't know the name of the card or exactly what the card does. But you're like, I want something that does this.
Yeah.
All right, well, let me help you go find this, and that's what those two things do.
And then it can even lead you to asking more questions, which will lead you
Yeah.
into learning more things.
Yes. Or an hour and a half rabbit hole down
Yep.
Scryfall searches.
Yep.
Could be either.
I think we've all been there. I definitely
Oh
have.
yeah, for sure. So that's like I said, that's my overall process. I'm happy to answer like more specific questions. Um, this is
Sure.
it could be as wide or as narrow as you want.
Yeah, I like so I like the I like understanding the process and the mindset behind it. So let's take one of the examples. So
Okay.
it was example 1, which was we have a commander.
Yes.
And now we're expanding the arrows out to fill the square.
Hmm.
So we have Meren. Um, for I see a bunch of people in chat. Um, Obviously, if you know Justin Parnell, you know Justin Parnell's association with Meren. It's, I mean, that's why I came to you, being the expert on it.
Yeah.
I've never built one, so I have a Meren in the center of my box, and I'm trying to fill towards the corners.
Yep.
where's a good starting place? I guess I'll read this out to people real quickly. It's been on screen for most of it. Meren of Clan Neltoth, for people who've never seen this card. It's 2 black and a green. Legendary creature, human shaman. Whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. The whole cycle of these commander product was based around experience counters. At the beginning of your end step, choose target creature card in your graveyard. If that card's converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, return it to the battlefield. Otherwise, you put it into your hand. 3 power, 4 toughness. So at the beginning of our box, we have a Meren. Do you typically read all the card text on it and you let that card text kind of direct which way? Or do you go more looking for like staples and stuff?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. Staples are later.
Sure.
Staples are later.
Okay.
I want to get into the meat of the deck because sometimes a deck will like you might not need staples for everything. Because you might have like replacement cards that do the same effect but are more efficient with that commander.
With that commander.
Meren's actually a really good example of that because one of the things that a Meren deck has a really like incredibly easy job at doing is destroying permanents.
Yes.
Pretty much any permanent on the battlefield, just because there's so many creatures that have those type of effects. So you might not need to have as many staples for those type of effects that you normally would because Meren is providing that for you for like a lot of recursion and to be able to do that at a pretty great degree. All right, so we have our commander. So the first thing I would do, let's say I'm gonna go into this process pretending I don't have like a deck for Meren in my head right now. So the first thing I would do is I would go to Scryfall and I would type in the word sacrifice and then select black and green for commander. And I would also select creature. So so I would go to card type creature, so advanced search, card type creature, black and green, and then type in the word sacrifice.
All right. 565 cards.
Yep, great. So we got a lot of options.
Yep. Oh man,
so,
I've never actually seen this card.
So there are so many, and generally, so there's an upside and a downside to this. The upside for me is I probably know the Oracle text on about 95% of these cards. I've been playing Magic for 22 years. I think I was, I've either cast them or seen them come through standard on almost all of them. So now for some people, 565 cards, it's going to be a lot, and you're probably not going to know what they all do. Yeah. But these are all creatures that have to do with sacrificing. They don't all sacrifice themselves, but that's kind of what you're going to go through and look at. Another option, so because I don't want us to go through this entire list. Another option is to type in the word dies rather than sacrifice. That means that it will have an ability when the creature dies. And you're going to have some results that are going to end up saying like when another creature dies, but that's also okay because your deck is also going to be about that. Sometimes your creatures aren't going to care about if it's dying or if something else is dying because in Meren a lot of creatures are going to die. So those are a couple of things. Those are a couple of things that I would look at. Off the top of my head, what I would try to do is find creatures that can sacrifice themselves to do a thing. So some Meren staples, like off the top of my head, would be one of Meren's best friends is Spore Frog. Sacrifices itself to fog, which a lot of people get very aggravated at. But if you're playing Meren, it's probably something you're going to want to have access to. Another card. We talked about destroying artifacts and enchantments and permanents in general, but Caustic Caterpillar is another one. And these two are really important because with Meren, you want to have a pretty good spread of converted mana cross cost across all of your creatures because Meren has to gain experience counters, and it's going to go from 0 to a lot.
Yes.
So, so generally, you do want a bunch of things on the lower end. But Meren's so powerful, it doesn't even care because it'll just return it. It'll just raise dead if it doesn't return to the battlefield.
Yep.
It's
And then
Caustic
you can just
Caterpillar.
play it again.
Yeah, exactly. Caustic Caterpillar, Spore Frog. Those are two ones that I think about instantly. Um, Another one, and this one's a little more off the beaten path, but is good for getting Meren out early. Is the card Blood Pet. Now, a lot of the Blood Pet is. I think the last time it was printed was in like 7th edition. Maybe it was in like a dual deck. It's just a 1 black mana imp, and you can sacrifice it for a single black mana, and that's it. But this lets you play stuff early, and it also is another card that sacrifices for nothing, and costs 1, lets you get Meren out early. Which having Meren, yeah, I know 7th edition. Let's see. Nope, so I was right.
It was
7th edition is
7th.
last
Yep.
time. Okay, yeah. But this is like because like I said, I have fortunately been playing Magic for a very long time. But this is a card like that I put in my Meren deck, uh, that people always have to read. Okay,
Oh
so
yeah.
other cards, cards with creatures with not convoke, evoke, are very very good. Shriek
Oh.
Maw is one of my go tos. There's a new card in Modern Horizons 2, Formation Breaker. I don't remember the card.
Huh. I don't
Um,
think I saw this one.
that might not be the right name.
Oh, and Endurance, the green one?
Nope, no. Well, we want to stay away from endurance. Merit
Oh,
does
that's
like
right, because
endurance.
it
Yeah. Let's see.
go to the Scryfall.
I am going to Scryfall. It is not Formation Breaker. I don't.
uh,
I think it's Breaker, something Breaker.
Evoke. Yeah, so
It's
like
not.
here's
Oh, Foundation Breaker. That was
Foundation
close.
Breaker.
Foundation Breaker. Yes. So this is
What is this?
yeah, evoke black and green. And we'll just search this and see what comes up. So Foundation Breaker, there you go, number 4.
Yep. Huh.
So this is the creature that you can evoke. It'll destroy an artifact or enchantment, immediately head to your graveyard, and then be able to get it back. Pretty much any of the evoke creatures are very good. Another one that was on that page, Offal Snout, is a great graveyard hating card because it's a creature with flash for a black, and it'll trigger Meren on the way out. So,
Huh.
yep, just pick something out of the graveyard, and of course, with Meren, all of your creatures are are recurable, and you're going to recur them a lot.
It's very I know a lot of people will hear this term thrown out, but it can be very like toolboxy and very
Mm,
you
big time.
you fill your creature bag full of tools, and as we've already said earlier in the episode, your graveyard being a second hand,
Hmm.
being able to pick out the piece you need for the problem you have in front of you.
Yep. So speaking of graveyard being a second hand, uh, while it is quite easy to put a creature on the battlefield and then sacrifice it for an effect, there are easier ways to get creatures in the graveyard, and that's pulling them directly from your deck. So a card, the most generally the most powerful card that does this is the card Entomb, which
Yep.
just takes any card, instant speed, single black mana, puts it directly from your library into your graveyard. And Buried Alive for 3 mana does that for 3 creatures.
And we got a
So
new one in Modern Horizons. An unmarked
Unmarked
grave.
Grave. Yeah.
I
Excellent. Yeah, so
I've been
those
using
that
that one for throwing life from the loam in the graveyard.
perfect. Yeah, I do the same thing frequently with Entomb. Life from Loam. I mean, maybe to get a wasteland or something. Yeah, because it doesn't care. It doesn't care if it's a creature or not. Buried Alive only gets creatures. Fortunately, in Meren, you're going to want to get creatures like
Mm-hmm.
99% of the time, so we're good there. So we have a few things. We're going to put things directly into the graveyard. We have a small suit of creatures. Obviously, with a Meren deck, you're going to have, I would say, minimum 25% of your deck's going to be creatures. Probably a little bit more than
Okay.
that. Just because there are a lot of other things, in most cases, are kind of defensive measures to make sure that people can't stop you from trying to, do your Meren thing
Yeah.
because they're going to want to kill Meren. So with Meren, I always like to have uh, something that can give her shroud or hexproof when people try
Okay.
to target it. This is just for me personally. This is just for my personal bias because that happens very frequently,
Yeah.
which also makes a card. Well, and this is kind of getting into staple territory, but like heroic intervention is really critically important just to keep Meren specifically around.
Yeah.
You don't
Um,
care if they kill any of the rest of your creatures; they're all going to come back.
yeah. This is, and we kind of talked about it a little bit. Like, some players are gonna have that boogeyman bias. I guess is kind of the best way to put it. Of like they
Mhm.
see Marin, and maybe they've grown up playing against it a lot, and they, even though a lot of Marin decks will be different, they're like, oh, I assume they're doing this thing. This needs to
Yep.
not stay on the table. Um, so you need ways of protecting it, of course.
Yes. Yep. Um, So fortunately, with the kind of protection stuff, like either giving it hexproof, there's also a lot of ways in black that you can do that aren't necessarily hexproof, but a card like Undying Evil, which will just bring Meren directly back if it dies, because sometimes obviously if someone has like a Wrath of God, you know, giving it hexproof or shroud isn't going to do anything. Meren's still going to die, but with this, it doesn't protect it from getting exiled. But if it dies, it'll come right back.
Yep.
So I always like to have a couple of those. And in this deck, specifically cards like Undying Evil, and I actually think there's one in either Modern Horizons 2 or Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. I don't
Oh,
recall. Let me
it
see if
doesn't.
I
It
can
like
search.
returns it tapped, right?
Yeah, returns it tapped. Mana value
Um,
equal to 1. It's an instant. I'm gonna see if I can search it
I can.
on Scryfall. Let's see if I can find it
I
real
think
quick.
there's a black and one instant from Kaldheim,
But
but
there's also okay, yes, it is actually from Adventures in the Forgotten Realm. Feigned Death. It's an instant for a single black. Until end of turn, target creature gains when this creature dies. Return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. They have +1/+1 counter on it. So let's add that in. Feigned Death. And we either want two or three of these effects. You could probably do it. Well, actually, we'll call it 2.5 because Malakir Rebirth is the half because that is also a land. It is a
ah,
flip card from yeah Zendikar Rising. So that's going to do the same thing for a single black. It costs you 2 life, but it's also a land and also 2 life irrelevant.
I was just like, we got 40. It's fine.
We got 40. Yeah, this is a drop in the bucket. So we have those three. Not only are those going to be good with Meren to keep her on the battlefield, but a lot of your creatures, as we look over here, most of the creatures that we have either have an effect when they enter the battlefield or when they leave the battlefield. So all of these cards are going to kind of work together with those two.
Yep.
So this is the type of thing that I'm looking at. And again, this is my experience with building this deck, which I have done. I've built numerous iterations of Meren decks. Um, but those are the type of things that you want of saying like what group of cards are going to be or work really well with the commander that I'm playing.
Hmm.
Okay, so we have some cards to put things into graveyards. We have some cards to put to keep things out of the graveyard or uh, otherwise. But what happens if someone wants to exile a thing? Uh-oh. Well, we don't want things to be exiled. So one of my favorite cards. So this is a two card, well, it's, two separate cards that I think are some of the most underplayed cards in all of Commander, and I play them in just about any deck that I can, especially if I don't have a lot of sacrifice outlets. But even in Meren, it's so critical of some that we have access to some of these cards is important. So these two cards are Rift Sweeper and Pull from Eternity.
Yeah.
Because I know when I'm playing Commander, people like to exile my stuff, and I don't like them to exile my stuff. So I want to get them back from exile. Pull from Eternity is the white one. We can't play
Yep.
that one, but we can play Rift Sweeper, which
Yep.
is conveniently a creature, which
Creature.
of course Meren wants. So Rift Sweeper is going to shuffle it back into the deck instead of Pull from Eternity, which is going to put it in the graveyard, but that's all we have access to, so we're going to play that too. Okay, now I will admit this is a pet card of mine.
Sure.
for the next card I'm going to talk about, but I legitimately believe it's one of the best cards in Meren. I've been talking about this card for like a decade.
Let me see if I can
And
guess
that's
this one.
yeah, go ahead.
Is it Spawning Pit?
It sure is.
Yeah. All right.
Yes. So Spawning Pit, this to me is should be a staple in every Meren deck, just straight up. Spawning Pit is an artifact for 2 that has the text: sacrifice a creature, put a charge counter on Spawning Pit. And you can pay 1 generic mana and remove 2 spawn counters from Spawning Pit to make a 2/2 colorless, not artifact, creature token. So this is really critical because you don't want your creatures to get exiled. This is also really critical because it allows you to sacrifice creatures at will, which means you're going to get a huge amount of counters, experience counters for Meren, and of course, for every 2 creatures you have, that's another creature you can make and sacrifice. So it starts to become this constant thing. Um, and again, with Meren, putting creatures into your graveyard is fine. You just got to keep them away from exile. And this is the absolute best card to do it. Just
Another thing to note with
straight
this
up.
card, everyone, is it's sacrifice a creature, not sacrifice a non-token creature. So you can feed
Yes.
the spawn tokens back into itself if you have to.
Yep. I like to think about this as for every 2 sacrifices, you get a bonus sacrifice.
Yep.
And of course, you could also just wait, and you can do this at instant speed. So you can wait until the end of your, the right before you go, you have 6 counters on it. All right, I'm gonna make 3 2/2s
Mm-hmm.
in a turn. They don't come into play tapped. None of that stuff. Great card. It is my number 1 pet card in all of Commander. I've said the word Spawning Pit more than any other human being that's ever been alive. There's a reason for that. The card's great.
That's why when you're like, I'm gonna name this one card, I'm like, I think I know what this one is.
Yeah, yeah. So this kind of now we kind of come around the curve to all right. Well, what if we can't necessarily interact with all of our opponent's stuff? There's some mean cards that you can play in Meren. I don't know if we want to play them. Uh, one of them is a very iconic commander card. One of them is like a personal card to me that I like a lot. The iconic card that's incredibly powerful is Grave Pact.
Yep.
Um, Grave Pact is a card that I have played a lot. I cited as one of my favorite cards in Commander, which it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be very oppressive. And at the top of the show, we talked about saying you kind of have to be mindful of some of the of maybe powering down cards if you have Boogeyman cards.
Real quick
Uh,
segue in this.
yes.
Favorite Grave Pact art.
Ooh, my favorite Grave Pact specifically is 10th edition.
10th edition.
Yep.
Oh,
It is
yes.
it is the art that you have selected, but 10th edition is
It's,
just has the big X symbol,
yep.
which I'm quite
The
fond
black
of.
border.
Yeah, yeah, that is the one that I have in my handy deck is the 10th edition one. They're all great. I think every single art for Grave Pact is good.
I
I
really
actually
like the
don't think it has a
Stronghold
bad
one.
one. Yeah, the Stronghold one is very creepy. Like it's like discomforting feeling when you look at the art in all the best ways. Um, the 8th edition one is very literal.
Yep.
Um, yeah, the Stronghold one's really great because it is you are in the grave. You are already in the grave,
Yep.
and you are looking up at the whatever they are. Um, like I said, 8th edition one's very literal, but I don't hate it. It's just kind
Nope.
of silly.
It's a little
Um,
silly.
yeah, but I really like just uh, the the my favorite art, which is like is ninth edition, and then basically every reprint since then.
Yep.
Um, that one to me is like it feels like very ethereal. Like there's like this evil spell being cast.
Mm-hmm.
There's the grave is glowing. There's like smoke coming up. That's my favorite one. But again, I think they're all great. I don't think you can go wrong.
No.
Again, Grave Pact, all great art. But do we want it in this deck? I don't know. We're building this deck theoretically, so we'll leave it in. But that's a question you should probably
Yep.
ask yourself because this card is always significantly more powerful than it looks.
Yeah. Um, I know, like, a lot of people, especially in Commander, if you've hung out on Twitter and any Magic related things, you notice people have their very hot opinions and takes on how Magic should be played and such. Some people really dislike stacks, and a lot of association of stacks is like your smoke stacks, your Trinispheres and stuff like this. But
Hmm.
this is really a form of it.
Yes.
You are taxing what creatures can stay on the battlefield, and
Yep.
you are breaking parity on it. Um, with Meren and with various other effects. So yes, it's I'm a stacks player, and you need to be able to sit down with players and one be like, do you want to sit down to that type of game? If not, um, this is one of those type of cards that like it can really ruin someone's commander experience. So you should really think about it
Yes.
with the group you're playing with.
Yeah. And playing a commander like Meren, your whole deck is going to be about doing that. And
Mm.
the moment you land Grave Pact, you're going to turbocharge the rest of your deck.
Oh yeah,
And a lot of times, specific with Meren, it's not necessary. The deck generates so much value, you don't need to be like 2 for 0ing your opponents.
yeah,
Because you don't get, there's no downside to you having a creature go to the graveyard. It's an upside for you, and then they are all punished, usually doubly punished because you have some other thing going on. So
yeah.
just something to think about. Um, what was the next? Oh, so the next card is not a staple in Commander. It is one of my personal favorite cards. It's a really messed up card, and it's very difficult for me to not have it in. I've had it in every single Meren deck that I've ever made. Just because I love playing it so much, and this card is Mind Slicer.
Oh, okay.
Now, Mind Slicer is really mean. I don't recommend people put it. I'm just saying. I just wanted to bring it up. Mind Slicer is a 4/3 for 4 mana, and it just says whenever Mind Slicer dies, everyone discards their hand
Yo.
straight away. One of my favorite combos in all of Commander is to have Mind Slicer out and then cast the card Diabolic Intent. You get to sacrifice Mind Slicer. Everyone discards their hand, and then you have a Demonic Tutor on the stack.
Yo.
Um, so speaking of which,
This card gets
uh,
very messed up with things like Waste Not.
yeah, it's a super messed up card just in general.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, I really love it. I've not been able to
Oh wow.
resist putting it in a Meren deck because it's the only time I would play it. The only
Yeah.
time I would play it. Like I said earlier, I don't have a Meren deck right now. I took it apart because it was not. I don't know. Either I was being overzealous or people just were fearful.
Yep.
So, what I have now is I have a Corvold deck that's a secret Meren deck. The point of the deck is to get Meren out as quickly as possible, and then have access to a bunch of red cards that Meren likes too. So, and then the fallback in case Meren goes away is I have Corvold, which is a
You
ridiculously
Corval,
powerful
which is
card.
ridiculously powerful dragon.
Yeah, exactly. That's the backup. Corvold's backup plan. Um, so, and that I have Mind Slicer in that deck. Okay, so let's see. Where are we going? Where are we going next? Oh, so with Meren, like I said, you generally want a lot of creatures,
Hmm.
and that makes you obviously have access to green. That makes mana elves generally pretty good in Meren because you can sacrifice them later to get experience counters and then start getting bigger things out of your graveyard. Because as you have noticed right now, we don't actually have any large things. The biggest thing we have
I think it's
is
Shriekmaw,
Shriek Maul. Yeah,
which
and we're
Shriekmaw
not
really
even
says
really
2 mana
casting
on
that
it.
exactly. Now to come out of the graveyard for Meren, it's 5, but to get in there, it's only 2.
Yeah.
So, and this is kind of the thing. So this is the thing with Meren. Once you lay this base down, all the cards, and I think you kind of start getting into like meaningful cards to return at
Hmm.
like 5 mana, maybe 4 mana in some cases. This is where creative flexibility takes over.
Oh yeah.
Whatever you want, whatever creatures you just want to keep coming back over and over again. Really
See,
doesn't matter. You take your pick.
see, I think of like, I guess this shows what type of player I am. Is like my first thoughts of like a creature I want to come back that's on the higher CMC, right? Is like a Magus of the Abyss
Sure.
or
Yeah.
a when we were looking at sacrifice, the black and three Anwin, uh,
Yes, from everyone sacrifices
a
a
non-vampire.
non-vampire. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
those are great.
I mean, if you're looking for value, you get things like Thrag Tusk, which leaves a body
Hmm.
deck.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's the thing. So when you get to the what are the big things that I'm going to be returning? This is where you are able to kind of just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whatever creatures you like that you're like, man, I really wish I could have this creature come back over and over.
Does Scourge of? Do you find that Scourge of Meltoth finds it? I don't even remember what
Um,
this card does.
it comes back for black. It's just a 6/6 flyer.
Oh, it doesn't have an ETB or anything. You just can cast
Hmm.
out of the graveyard.
You can cast out of the graveyard for black. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the dragon that.
yeah. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine. It's just the thing is like it's so rare I play things that are they're
it
just
just
power and
beers.
toughness. Yeah, it's just a 6/6 flyer.
I thought it had
I mean,
ETB for some reason.
it is. I mean, it is good.
Yeah,
Like it is a good card, but like I want to do tricky
tricky
stuff
stuff.
with Meren. So
The
yeah,
oh, you get like actually a super. Oh, because you don't care about casting from the graveyard. I was like, my brain went to like Gravekeeper Lamia
yeah, because you
because
can get that back
it
and then you can find something
entombs
else.
it
Yeah,
entombs. It's a 4/4 lifelink
for 5. It's
for
also an enchantment creature. Not that that really matters, but yeah, yeah. Gravebreaker Lamia. That's a good one. That's a good one to add.
spells that you cast from. And see, this is where my tunneling brain goes. Is now I'm like, all right, so now I
Hmm.
have something that reduces spells. What other
So
fun stuff
yeah,
can we just cast out of the graveyard?
exactly. Yeah.
Um,
So this is like let's see. Basically, this is kind of where you get to, in my opinion, where each person kind of gets to take their Meren deck in the direction that they want to go.
mhm,
What do you have a theme, like an overall theme? So the Meren deck that I was actually in the process of making before Corvold came out, before I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna take Meren apart.
take Meren
Is
apart.
I was actually gonna turn my Meren deck into a zombies deck. So it was going to be
Oh,
zombie tribal with Meren, and I actually still might do that. Um, it's always constantly on the table. But so you have a lot of this like the baseline stuff, but then like all of my other like recursive creatures. So like it's a suite of like 20 creatures. We're all going to be zombies and zombie related stuff. So that's the kind of the angle that I was going to take that deck in because we have this, we have this kind of package of like what are the
mhm.
things that like Marin really wants to do, and then with the freedom or the creative choice portion where just what creatures do you want to come back out of your graveyard? I was going to pick zombies just because I actually currently don't have a zombie tribal deck. So
All right, so let's see what Scryfall has.
sure.
Creature, zombies, text, dies. Green
Yep.
black.
All right, going to return about 180 results.
49. Uh,
That's less than I thought.
we got oh, we see the ghoul again. We've seen this guy pop up a few times in our search results. Now
Yep.
we've just more specifically gone down to zombie. Attenda and Veraska. Oh, this is the one from the Planeswalker deck that, or no, wait.
Yes. It is from it is from the Guilds of Ravnica Planeswalker deck.
Um, Discordant Piper leaves a body. Good old crows.
Uh, yeah, there's
I mean, this just feeds the graveyard.
yeah, it's just anything. Yeah, we got Crow of Dark Tidings is actually pretty solid. A common card I play in Meren is Satyr Wayfinder.
Yeah, Sarah
Uh,
Wayfinder. Um,
so yeah, self mill
Sakura
things are
Tribuilder.
actually pretty good. Yeah. Oh
I
god,
know
Sakura
not a
Tribuilder.
zombie, but
That's
like,
yes. No, that's definitely that should have been one that we should have talked about in the first section
uh,
for sure.
yeah, the ideas of like, again, because you can do some really. Marin opens you up with some really cool lines of like, where people are limited on, or like, say a Silas Wren deck, you would like hit someone, get back your Wayfarer's Bauble or something like that. You could do similar esque things in a Meren deck, but you could use things like Circular Tribe Elder. Things that come to my mind are like Burnished Heart,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, because it sacks itself. Um,
Definitely. Yeah, anything that sacrifices itself, that's always worth a look. Anything that has a dies trigger, because you're going to make sure things can die, that's
there's a
always worth a look.
Dies Elf that finds a basic. Um,
That when it dies,
Viridian,
Viridian Emissary is the card you're thinking of.
yeah, is it? It's a
Yeah.
Dies trigger, right?
Yeah, you
Okay.
rampant growth when it dies. Yavimaya Elder, when that dies, you search for 2 basics, put them in your hand. Doesn't put them on the battlefield, but it is 2 more cards. It also can allow it. You can sacrifice a draw card, so that's a classic one. Um, yeah, there's just a whole bunch. Man, there's so many. That's just why Marin's so great. It's like you're like, okay, all I'm asking you is to put your creatures into your own graveyard, and you're like, great. Well, I wanted to
Like,
do that anyway, so
oh, we get actually, this is one of my favorite cards. The the supplier. Um,
Stitcher Supplier.
yeah,
Yep,
there we
yep,
go.
that's another, yeah. Stitcher Supplier, Seder Wayfinder. Yeah, just to continually mill, and that's a zombie too. Stitcher Supplier.
Yep. Yeah, I've definitely ran. I did the red black chainer as like a
Hmm.
turbo dredge
Nice.
with that big ox of Agonis.
Yeah, that gets scary because that chainer gives your creatures haste when they come back.
Oh yeah, from
Yeah, so
anywhere. So like as long as
yeah,
you're
you
not
start
casting it from
punching
your
real
hand.
hard. Yeah, you start punching people real hard with that one, real fast.
Um, so we got Satyr, uh, Acolyte of Affliction from the new Theros set.
Yes, Acolyte Affliction is really great. I
I
have
haven't
that.
actually got to play with that card yet, except for in
Oh,
like
it's
limited.
yeah, well, it's it's great there. And Acolyte Affliction's awesome. It mills you 2, and then you return a permanent, which sure,
Sure.
yeah.
Oh, I
And then of
moved my
course,
Grave
like
Pact. Whoops.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're very permanent based. Um, I always like to have other ways, since you're kind of working with a graveyard, other ways to get creatures back out of your graveyard. My favorite one is Necromancy because you can do it at instant speed,
Mm-hmm.
and it has the downside of if you do it at instant speed, the creature dies at end of turn. Um,
Yeah. This
Usually, that's not going to matter.
this card's pretty wild if people haven't sat across the table from this. I play this right now in Canlander because I'm playing Green Black Control.
Yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
you can do some wacky stuff like with this.
yep.
Your opponent puts an Academy Rector in the graveyard. That's yours now. Um, you can line up some really
Yep.
shenanigansy stuff with Necromancy.
Oh yeah. So someone in chat, you know what you'll see more of these days? Smothering Abomination. Smothering Abomination. That was actually going to be my. That was going to be the group of cards I was going to talk about next, which is so now we have all these creatures we want. What other cards can we put that benefit when creatures are sacrificed or dies? Smothering Abomination is a great one. I have that in my personal Yeheni deck. It's an all
Yep.
star there. Um, Something like Midnight Reaper
Midnight
is a
Reaper.
great one. Pitiless Plunderer, even though that card is really expensive now,
Is
it
it?
is
Actually, I can't say
exceptionally
that
good.
because just Magic in the last year.
Well,
Like,
that one's very expensive. Hey,
Payless.
go ahead and type that one in.
I'm terrified. All right, what do we got? I remember when this thing was like 25 cents.
It is not. You are
It
closer
it
in one
it,
direction.
it is it has gone. Jeez, I was. Is it? Is this $12 uncommon?
Yes.
$12 uncommon.
$12 is actually low. I think if you can find it for $12,
You should buy it.
that's the cheapest you can possibly get.
Jeez,
Yeah.
that's yeah. No, I definitely now that I think about it, I was like, oh no, I've seen this card floating at like 20. Like I think even last year because I was seeing some of the decks coming out. Especially looking at some of the new commanders coming out, that thing's probably just going to go up again. Treasures are becoming way
More
more
valuable.
relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. So so we kind of have all of our like different interaction points. We're interacting with different all of our different card types. We have some ways to protect our stuff. Uh, the kind of the greater themes of the deck are coming together, which is sacrificing creatures, putting creatures in their own graveyard, getting creatures back out of our graveyard. So obviously this isn't 100, but I think you basically just take each of these categories and then expand on
And
them.
you expand.
And then the last thing is like, all right, what staples do I need? Like what specific effects? This is when like I'm going and I'm adding Soul Ring,
Mm-hmm.
Arcane Signet. Solemn Simulacrum is a personal staple of mine, which
Yeah.
obviously goes great in Meren. It does something when it comes to play, does something when it dies, gives you more mana. Um, Eternal Witness, obviously like another staple, perfect in Meren as well.
We got the new Eternal Witness, the 4-drop one, tireless
Timeless
or
Witness, yeah.
timeless.
Yeah, Timeless Witness, that one's great too. Yeah, those are obviously just very good cards in Meren.
Yep.
So yeah, we that's kind of just when I go and add staples, the obvious.
Yeah.
Spore Frog was actually the first card that we added to the deck. Mega Trauma. It's appropriate that you brought that one up.
The Spore Frog, it's like, oh wait, yep, right there. We went.
Always
The
there.
line was Spore Frog, Caustic Caterpillar. All right, good.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Got the new border. I know. I'm a prophecy guy myself, but yeah. So that's really what like what and this is a fairly, like I said, kind of a fairly generic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. There's the old classic. A fairly generic Meren deck will look like before you start going into whatever direction you want, and then hopefully, kind of your secondary theme is going to inform more of your card choices with whatever you're doing. So if I was doing zombies and I'm starting to look at more zombie cards, and I would have something I'm like, okay, well, what makes me sacrifice creatures that also cares about zombies? Open the Graves, enchantment for 5. Everyone at the beginning of the upkeep, it's like and 1, except it's for zombies and it's enchantment. Anyway,
Yep.
so
You get. He's a zombie. Golgar Grip Troll.
yeah, Grave Troll is a zombie.
I don't know why I thought he was a skeleton for some reason.
He's very skeletal looking.
Yeah, especially because of course my brain went to the newer art, and I was just like,
Yeah, that the newer one actually looks more zombie like. I don't know where it put it in there. If it put it in here,
Yeah.
there it is. Top row.
yeah, you're right.
Oh, it is a skeleton. It is a skeleton. It's not a zombie.
I thought it was a zombie.
Yeah,
Troll skeleton.
Troll skeleton. There you go.
Yeah,
Should
you
be
want to talk
ashamed
about
of
you want to
myself.
talk about a way to turbo your graveyard full.
Yeah, that doesn't take very long.
Yo, spooky card, great card, wonderful card, but man, when you mutate a Brokos on top of onto a
Oh yeah.
Golgari Grave Troll.
Yeah. And then Grave Troll, the thing I like about Grave Troll in this deck is at some point you just return it and you're like, all right, this is 2020.
Oh, actually, this is a zombie. Unless this is a skeleton, in which case, secretly skeletons just start getting print. Lotleth Giant.
Oh, that is Lotleth Giant? That's a zombie. Lotleth Troll and Giant are zombie. Yeah, because that has Undergrowth, deal 1 damage to target player for each creature in your graveyard.
Yeah,
That would be another great thing to search on Scryfall is just search Undergrowth.
Oh, true. Because we're creature dense deck anyway.
Now we're creature dense. Yeah. And then you have things like Izani, which counts creatures in your graveyard. Lotleth Troll. Lotleth Giant, not
Lotleth
Troll.
Giant. Okay.
Yeah, not Troll. Troll's the tiny one.
Older Hulk. When it enters battlefield, return target land to the battlefield.
Yep, might want to do that.
Just a giant 6/6.
Yeah, 6/6 probably for 2.
Oh, this is just keyword Undergrowth. Okay. I was like, Undergrowth champ. And this is that example of like, it's going to look for Undergrowth, and it's going to throw you every card that hits it. If you just want a big old lurker. Um, Menace in a bunch. I could actually. Uh, I've played my fair share of Crypt Incursion, and I could see
Yeah.
this in a very aggressive. Like someone tries to hate you off the table, this could be a nice lifesaver. Pad your life total.
Yeah. Yeah, Crawforge is actually not bad. It's a 4/4 for 5, and it's like in a deck like this is going to gain you like 10, 15 life in most cases
Yeah, and then you're
with
just looping it,
more.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
So Crawforders, that's actually a pretty solid one, to be honest. And of course, Hatchery Spider doesn't do anything because you have to cast it. It's a big thumbs down
oh,
for that one.
but I definitely like and see this is where like some people bouncing back and forth between Scryfall, you can run into this. So it's like
Yeah,
we came here for the giant because I can remember spelling
exactly.
on it, but now we found this, and it's like I could
Yep.
definitely see these two. Um, you cast um, inners, like
It's
even from
just the
this,
spider. Yeah.
yeah, even
Oh,
from like these. I mean, this is another draw outlet and gain life, also a sack. Like I definitely gravitate towards these three.
yeah. I
Um,
think those are really the three that you're looking at: is Izani, the Foragers, and the Troll, or in the Giant rather.
and then I always forget the spelling on this. Lotl. Okay, that's why. There we go. Yeah, because worst case, it's sure we don't like nothing wrong with just having a beater, but when it comes in, you have like 15 cards, nugging someone for 15.
Yeah. So how many creatures are we at right now?
26.
26? Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine the least you could this is about the least you could ever get away with.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I would say we're probably adding before the deck is done, you're probably adding 5 to 10 more creatures.
Yeah.
So,
When you go
all right,
to just like estimate real quickly, when you're doing lands, right? So
yeah,
like
that's exactly what I was going to say next.
as like you see this number creeping up in the corner. I think every Magic players came up to this.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I have all these cards. Let's throw in 37 lands, and you're at like 120 cards.
Yeah. So I stop at 65. I try to stop at 65 because
Okay,
basically 35 lands. I would say that's like the average of that I play in my deck.
that's about
And
where I'm at too. 35 these days.
yeah, and sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. Generally, I don't know. Maybe I have one deck that's less than that. Uh, Most of the time, it's a little bit more. I like playing lands, so I don't really mind. I don't mind having more lands necessarily. Um, So what are we at? What is the total
We're at
total? Right.
we're at 39 main board, um, assuming 35 lands. That puts us at 74
75.
or
So
74.
and then Meren, right?
I think the 39 takes into account Meren.
Okay.
26 1 is 27, 28, 29, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. Yep, takes into account Meren.
Okay, cool. All right. So we have 26 cards if we're assuming 30. So 26 cards, and then you can kind of then this is just, like I said, filling out the rest of those things that you're
Yep.
whatever you want the deck to do. Like whatever you want this specific deck to do. Obviously, you're gonna do the thing by way of having creatures enter the graveyard and come back out of the graveyard, but I don't know. That's kind of we
Yep.
we've got most of the different angles.
Yeah. We start with that first thought process of we started with Meren. We had a
Mhm.
box that was the completed deck, and we're working our way out to the edges.
Yep.
And we hit not not to throw the term staples. We hit the certain blocks along the way that we had to answer, which is uh, how are we putting things in the graveyard? So we had our entombs, our buried alives, our unmarked graves, etc. How are we protecting Meren?
Hmm.
We have our rebirth effects and our hexproof effects. Um, as we've worked away and our focus was started on Meren. Um, Meren cares about the graveyard. What are we putting in the graveyard? And that's when we started going through all of these effects. Just to recap, anyone else who's came in, um, and that's how we've got to this point so far. Um, how when you get into like redundancy, because again, um, for as long as you've been playing, they keep printing more cards. Um,
They sure do.
they
I
sure
wish they'd
do.
slow it down a little bit, but
I This has been a heck of a year. It's been a heck of a few years actually. Let's
I
be
was gonna
honest.
say, yeah.
These last few years, I there's a lot of fatigue. Um, but like for example, I'm off the top of my head totally gonna get this number wrong. Five grave pact effects.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Um, so when you get is that where you get a little bit too more build aroundy, where it's like, all right, I like this grave pact effect. Do I run every copy of it? Because then that fills up slots. Um,
I mean, you could if you're trying to make the deck better, like better,
yeah,
because that's gonna be the most oppressive angle you can generally take
sure.
Meren. Is I'm gonna make sure no one has creatures.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that gets to have creatures, and I get to decide when everyone else has them.
So I'll move this to considering. But like, for example, a less oppressive thing, but just one that we've automatically did. Uh, they print a new witness.
Yeah.
Um, so we threw both of them in there because
Hmm.
having two copies of a card in a 100 card singleton is better than having just the one.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. So for it's kind of like effect specific.
yeah.
Like I don't think in a regular deck that doesn't care about the graveyard, I'm gonna play Timeless Witness. But I'm gonna play Eternal Witness in basically every green deck.
Yes.
But with Meren, you actually do care about the graveyard. So Timeless Witness is more valuable here than it is in a random green deck. So in this sense, I would play it, but it's also not a non-oppressive card.
Yeah.
Like in my personal candy deck, I have Grave Pact, I have Dictate of Erebos, I have Butcher of Malakir.
Yep.
Um, that's what I want to be doing. That's the only deck I have those cards in.
Yeah.
I don't have a single copy of any of those cards in any other of my decks.
Yep.
That's the deck I have those in, and that's because I want to make sure no one else has creatures.
Yep.
And you know,
Um,
that redundancy is good because that's what I want that deck to do. If you want your Meren deck to do that, you absolutely could, and it's going to be very, very good. There's no chance it won't be.
but when we look at, for example, we have 3 Entomb effects in my, or 4 actually now, but also from Modern Horizons, Vile Entomber,
Oh yeah, which is actually a creature. So
which
that's
is a creature
probably
based one.
that's probably quite good. Yeah, that would be a fifth. Yeah, and
So
that might actually be better than. Then you ask like that's when you get to the like you're nearing 100 cards. You're like, how many of these effects do I want?
how
What are
many
the
do I
best
need? Yep.
ones? Yeah,
Because like, is this better than a Gravebreak
Un-
Lamia?
yeah.
Um,
Or is it better than unmarked grave because it's a creature?
because it's a creature.
Yeah.
Another one is like, for example, Kaldheim. I mean, if you want to talk about a beater that actually has a effect that we could use in this deck, not Rune
Rune,
Scar Demon, which was the tutor.
burning rune demon.
Burn it, yes.
Yeah.
Um, the pseudo intuition on a demon.
Yeah. I just had a card, like a newer card. I've lost it. I didn't write it down. Hopefully I come back around to it. Yeah, I think we're still as we look, there's like a bunch of staples that we're still missing. Um, we don't have demonic tutor in here.
Yeah.
I would certainly add 1 to 2 sweepers. Damnation is pretty good in a Meren
Yep.
deck. You don't care if your creatures die, and if you have one of these other effects to make sure that your Meren doesn't die or dies and comes back,
Yep.
then all the better.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't get all the white choose one, destroy the rest effects.
Yeah, I know, no kidding.
Oh, man. Abzan Marin. Oof.
Yeah. Yeah, I get so in my Corval deck I get access to a couple of some of the red cards. And there's not like that many that get too crazy. Uh but I do have Dockside Extortionist in that deck, and that one does get pretty
That
crazy
gets, yeah,
when you bring it back out and forth. Also have Mayhem Devil uh with
card's
that
great.
too. Because yeah, card is great. That is definitely true.
Um, yeah, so we get Damnation. I mean, if you want to talk, uh, I mean, depending on where you're playing, but like a good old fashioned Massacre Worm can,
Oh yeah.
um, if you find yourself at a loss for, I mean, at this point, you've grinded so much value, you're hopefully playing more Magic than your opponents.
So how about this? Let's not have any Grave Pact effects in
Sure.
the deck, and let's instead have creatures that do it. So we'll have like Fleshbag Marauder and Plague Crafter
Yeah.
instead.
Actually, this is a perfect example of a redundancy effect. There
Yeah.
are five, five flesh bags now.
Are there?
I think Fleshbag, Merciless, Executioner, Plague
Oh,
Crafter,
Slum Reaper now. Slum Reaper. I always forget that one because that one costs 4.
Demonic Disciple, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Plague Crafter, Merciless Executioner, Fleshbag Marauder, Demon's Disciple, and then Slum Reaper is 5.
yep,
I literally never include Slum Reaper because it costs
just
4.
because
All
it
the other
costs
ones cost
four.
3. Because it's like, oh, it's a 4/2. It's like, I don't care. I'm going to
I don't
sacrifice
care.
this
It's
most of the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
We got four that say the exact. We have four edicts.
Yeah. We have 4. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And then
because
those are good because then that's more creatures, which we want. Like I said,
yep,
we're probably going to get to like 35 creatures.
feats
So,
Meren.
mhm, exactly.
Why do I have this feeling that we're missing one? Merciless Executioner. No, that's all of them.
No, there's 5. There's those 5.
Yeah, I was dropping uh the Slum Reaper because it does cost four.
Yeah. And we might end up cutting like one
Demon's
or two of
Disciple.
those.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, Demon's Disciple.
Yeah.
And like at the end of like the deck, we might end up cutting one or two of those
Yeah.
just based on numbers of everything else. But we'll add them in for now just to get get
Get
stuff,
get stuff.
get the deck filled out.
Um, I start with my pet cards that I want to build around, and then just slam lands, then try to fill. I mean, that's another totally valid way of doing it. Um, I was reading Mega Traumas in chat of just I start with these cards, go here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the build around method, like I've seen people build around an enchantment of just like I have a kindred discovery. I want to name
Yeah.
I want to name Thopter on it, and I'm gonna have
Hmm.
Sai as my commander. What can I do with this? Well, you can draw all the cards, and this is how.
Yes. Yeah. Surprisingly easy, actually. Um,
Check EDX lands are like below
below
36 on.
36. Yeah. Yeah. I'm at like 35. I think that's probably where I would start here.
I I think it's so it's interesting because like so I've been playing. I mean, my first commander deck was Dorn the Siege Tower,
Hmm.
and um, I remember running. Oh god, my first precon was the Duretti precon, and
The
that
mono
thing
red ready.
the
Yeah.
mono red Duretti, and that thing had like 42 lands in it. I think.
I'm sure. Yeah, they've calmed down a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, the most recent Adventures in the Forgotten Realms decks are 39, 39, 39, and 38 lands respectively. So that's what you got. That's what you
yeah,
got going with that.
and it's a good starting point. But I think most people I find like because you want to run all these cool cards, the first thing that always gets trimmed is lands.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah, which is dangerous to do.
which is dangerous to do. But like,
Oh,
oh
so this. Sorry, I'm just. I was trying to think back of decks I've played recently. So the number one new card to put into Meren is Grist the Hunger Tide, because it is a planeswalker that you can recur with Meren's ability.
yes,
So we're gonna add that one in.
I have been staring at this card
Yeah,
so much lately.
it's coming
Um,
down in price too, so this is the time to get it.
yeah, I recently picked one up when I was on vacation at
Yeah,
my local LGS because I was staring at this card in the case and I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna use you in.
I want to find something.
You're so cool. I just want a green Sun Zenith for this thing.
Yes. Oh god, there's so many things. You can unearth it, just the card unearth,
Yeah, you can
three or
unearth with
less.
it.
It's so great.
You can I play Canadian Highlander. You can recurring nightmare this thing.
Yeah, that's the number one card I wish was unbanned in Commander.
I agree with you. I think
I don't think I would do fair things with it, but I'm
oh
willing
yeah.
to sacrifice the fairness for me being able to play with it.
It's one of those cards where it's like I could see where they were coming from when it got banned. But if you look at the evolution of Commander now, because
Yeah.
between let's be honest, WotC, there's power creep. You can't really turn a blind eye to it to a
Yeah,
degree.
it's impossible. It's going to continue. It's not going
Um,
to stop for sure.
yeah, so you're gonna see cards, and like it's maybe something to look at because like back then, it's easily like, especially someone who knows how to use that card well. It can be
Yeah,
very hard to interact with.
that's the kind of the problem. I just had this conversation about recurring nightmare with my friend and co-host on Commander versus Stephen Green,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about it, and he was like, "It's fine to unban," and I don't think it is, and I'm the person that's going to abuse it. And
Yep.
he's like, "Well, I'll just disenchant." I was like, "You'll never have a
Never.
chance. You'll never have a single chance to be able
Nope.
to disenchant or move it from the battlefield. It will never be on the battlefield, and you have priority. That's just not how it's going to work."
Yep.
And he's just like, "Oh, you'll leave it out there sometime," and I'm like, "I won't. I
No.
never will. That's just never 0% of the time."
It it I think like the only weird interaction you'll ever be able to potentially answer it is I mean you just don't play constellation effects, but like if you get a constellation trigger when it enters.
Oh yeah, you just no.
No, you just
You don't do
well,
any of that.
nope.
You're never leaving it. You're never leaving it down there.
Nope.
Okay.
Great card.
So speaking of Grist, we have what right now we have what necromancy as the
Yep.
only come back out of the graveyard.
Yep.
So that's my favorite. My second favorite is victimize, which is great in a Meren deck, because you want it gets back two creatures, but you also get a sacrifice creature.
Are we doing like a so I was thinking of creature based ones, feeding into Meren.
Yeah, yeah. So like Doom
Apprentice
Necromancer. Apprentice Necromancer. You do either Apprentice Necromancer,
Yep.
Doom Necromancer.
One leaves it around, right? Doomed leaves it around. Apprentice sacks it at end of turn.
Yes. Yeah. They're both. I mean, they're both fine. They're both
Yeah.
fine.
I mean, Apprentice.
Cost 2, Doom cost 3.
Yeah. Being able to get your more ETB centric effects, so like your Solemn, things like that, your Shriek Claws. Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up Gris because this is one of those. It's literally sitting on my desk right now where I'm just like,
I just bought one. I bought the extended art one. I was like, yeah.
I stared at it. I'm like, it's like that in Grief. I'm staring at a Grief, and I'm like, I want to put this in a deck.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to put this in.
Yeah. So we have opened the graves down there at the bottom,
Yep.
which is great. I think that's another good redundant effect we could have. And I actually like those not being creatures, because then a sweeper doesn't get everything.
Sure.
So the worst version is Golgari Germination, which is basically the same thing. You get a 1/1 Saproling instead of a 2/2 zombie, but same thing. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you get a 1/1 Saproling. It's only 3 mana. So,
I'm unfamiliar with this card.
yeah, it's it's pretty narrow. Like there's not a whole lot of decks I would put it in, but like it's when you start kind of having things going in and out of the graveyard a lot, having a lot of extra graveyard sacrifice fodder around can be helpful, especially if you have like a spawning pit, and then you
Yep.
can kind of control it, and then you can turn those creatures back into counters on the spawning pit. So
One of the things I glanced at, talking about having similar effects in non-creature form, especially like if Meren gets answered, which will hopefully not happen, but most likely will. Um, for draw, because we have our Midnight Reaper,
mhm,
our Smothering Abomination. Golgari has the Molder Vine Reclamation,
mhm.
and what is the other one? The Morbid one.
Death Heap Ritual.
Death Heap Ritual.
I think that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I remembered it from Conspiracy.
Yeah, I think yeah, cards that are like that, um, it's you're kind of walking this fine line with you want a lot of things to be creatures, but the
Yep.
things that you want like every turn, you don't always want to be creatures because the creatures are going to die so frequently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are good examples of non-creature effects that you want
Yeah. You'll always
to
want to be drawing cards. You'll
hmm
hopefully always want to be making bodies.
So, one of the things with a Meren deck that I have found is I generally my hand is always full, but I don't always have enough mana to cast my
Mm,
spells
okay.
because oftentimes in the like kind of when you get your engine going, you're not casting many spells. You're actually just bringing stuff back in and out of the graveyard. So basically any wood elves, Farhaven elves, I'd probably
Oh.
add those two in. Um, they're not as good as Sacred Tribe Elder, but they operate in a similar space. And then we have three of those effects.
Um, if we're running a lot of basics, what is the new not? Oh man, that was actually a while ago. The Harrow Elf. Um,
Spring Bloom Druid.
that one.
Think that is correct. I got Scryfall though.
Springbloom Druid.
Yep, got it. I love that card.
When did this card? I was like, oh, that card came out like a year ago. I guess 2019 was Modern
Just
Horizon.
it was almost exactly 2 years ago. So you're not
Yeah.
doing too bad.
Okay,
Not
not
doing
too
too
bad.
bad. Not too bad.
What was a year of COVID?
Yeah. What is time
What is
anyway?
time anymore? Oof. But man, yeah, I could definitely see that where it's like, because besides the end of turn getting one thing for free, like you're gonna need mana. Well, some of this stuff is gonna be kind of mana intensive, so like, if you're just looping things,
hmm
you can
Yes,
you can get
very
caught
much
up
so.
in like just spinning your wheels. Um, and at the end of the day, we can sit here and we can spin wheels and just burn up a bunch of smoke, but like we need to be moving forward.
All right, so let's add a couple of like big threats. Like we have a big masker worm. Let's see if we can add two more, and I think we're
Yep.
mostly good on our creatures here.
Well, so we have Masker Worm, we have Lotless Giant, and we have
Yep,
Golgari Grave Troll,
we do. We do.
which this thing's just going to get huge over time.
Grave Troll is interesting because it's just going to be basically like a Lord of Extinction.
Oh man, I
It's
haven't
not
played that
gonna,
card in a while. Hell
which
yeah.
is yeah, which is fine, but it's like it doesn't have any evasion.
Yep.
It's just going to be this big thing. Where the other two are like ETB abilities that you can like
That
keep
you can loop
doing
through.
exactly. Um, so this is the question now: is how mean do we want to be with these
Um,
big, like a big nasty creature?
yeah. As we started it at the beginning of the episode, like we talked, you could make this a very vicious deck.
Yeah, you
Um,
can. It takes very little effort.
it takes very little effort, and again, when we led with that first question of the boogeyman in the room, if you lead with a very vicious form of this deck,
Yeah.
if you play it the same LGS every week, or the same group of friends, uh,
Mhm.
the targeting is going to be more warranted. You are showing a reason to. Um, so
Yeah.
if you want to
Yeah.
enjoy the deck and you want to
You play it multiple times.
play it multiple times, uh, I and I think this also the point you brought up of homogenization. Um,
Hmm.
I think there's this. I'm not going to call it a fault, but there definitely is this focus. I more recently of playing optimally, or not playing like decision making optimally, or like deck building optimally. So it's like
Hmm.
uh, as we've already talked about, um, power creep is a thing, and some cards are like similar effects are getting printed at lower CMC or etc.
Yes.
All of a sudden, like green decks you see back in the day of, I remember explosive vegetation was a staple.
Yeah.
Now you're looking at, 3 visits gets a reprint, and now green is like, cool, I get to run 3 visits, rampant growth,
Nature's
uh,
Lord just got a reprint.
nature's lore. Um, so like they have all these 2-drop ones, and they're like, oh man, well I guess I'll go to cultivate on 3. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but when you're looking at, so when you go to some of these builders and you're just seeing like all of these like very, I don't want to just keep using the term pushed, but all these, um,
Oh, I mean that's the
yeah,
case though.
that
They
it
are
is.
pushed.
Um, you have to make those like decisions when you're doing your deck building of like, I always called it the safety valve of like, we could easily take this and we could jam in all the grave packs and like demonic tutor for grave packs.
Yep.
But when you are playing with your group of friends, playing your local LGS, the biggest thing you can decide on is like, where does your play group play at? Like, get a feel for the room,
Yep.
and then exercise for yourself is naturally trying to apply that safety valve while you're deck building. So like,
Which is tough because it's
yeah,
really easy to because no one's going to check you.
no,
You're only gonna you're gonna people are gonna check you when they don't want to play with you anymore.
yeah, you're your own
When they're like,
quality
ah, I don't
control.
want to. Yeah, I don't want to play that. I don't want to play against that Meren deck anymore.
Yeah. Um,
Or you won't want to play it because you keep dying first.
yep.
Which was my experience. So, but I didn't do this. I was like, I want to make Meren as good as I can. Now this was early in this card's existence.
Yes.
So, um, but that is definitely where it ended up. So, let's see.
Because like,
So,
where I look at this, like the creature base, for example, right now,
mhm.
I don't see anything that screams like, if I was going to a local LGS that I have never played before, because I recently moved to Georgia from 10 years in Florida.
Okay.
So I'm still like getting settled and going into LGSs and just sitting down with new groups of Magic players that I've never experienced. Um, I would say sitting down, none of these cards to me, like, I would feel uncomfortable playing against unknown meta. And if I play against people,
I think there's probably one. I think Mind Slicer is
oh,
probably going
mine's
to
okay. Yes, the
Mind
Mind
Slicer is
Slicer,
probably going to be a pretty unpopular card after the first time that
the
somebody
first
plays
time.
against it. Yeah.
So we'll move it. And again, the beauty of deck builders, a lot of them have considering boards. And
Yep.
if you find yourself, you're like, shift it down. So we have like our
Yeah.
Mind Slicer and our Grave Pact effects, and you could fill them all out and being like, oh,
Hmm.
this area is way more powerful. Let's crank it up.
Yeah.
Phyrexian
Yeah.
Obliterator. Uh, that's one where it's like you hit someone and they sack that many things.
It's whenever it takes damage.
It takes damage. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that could lead to. Also, some like I have my own feelings on Annihilator.
I hate Annihilator.
I
I'll
hate
say that it's
Annihilator.
one of my least favorite mechanics of
Okay,
all time.
cool. Same page.
Yeah.
I love people who love Eldrazi. I love big Eldrazi. I just wish Annihilator wasn't a keyword.
Yeah. All right. How many cards are we at now?
We are at 55, including 35 lands. You would be
So we have
at
10 cards.
10 cards.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's add 3 more creatures, get to an even 40.
Even 40, sure.
Yep. So let's add one big big effect. Why don't we add inexpensive, well, dollars wise inexpensive, very expensive mana cost wise, like a Terrestodon.
The classic. Is it 1R?
Uh, Probably 2.
Oh man. Nasty Terrasti.
There it is, 1R. 24 cents, beautiful. Okay, another card that I just personally love.
Don't get it right of replication.
Where, yeah, another card that I personally love that's not necessarily a big mana card, but it kind of ultimately is Gonti, Lord of Luxury.
Lord of Luxury.
Everybody loves a Gonti, right?
This card's just fun.
It is just fun. It's just fun. It's just fun.
It's just Death Touch, 2/3. When Gonti enters the battlefield, have fun.
Yep. Yeah, go search for your opponent's favorite thing, and you get it. And then you pick the last creature. We got, was that 39? So we have one more creature to add.
If I'm looking for just interesting fun, I would go. Oh, I played this deck too much in Pauper, and I love this card. Oh, but it's not. That's right. It's not a creature. We're trying to find one more creature. My brain went to Tortured Existence.
I was actually gonna. That was the card that was had the back of my mind to suggest. Go ahead and add that in. Tortured Existence is great.
If I'm doing Tortured Existence, because I'm staring at, I love me a good old Golgari Brown Scales.
All right, sure. Well, we got two dredgers in there now.
Yep. You can just find your life total getting too low. You can do Torture Existence things with this. Also, weird interaction with Meren I didn't even think about is if your experience is too low, you get the gain life trigger when Meren returns it to your hand.
I think you can just opt to. Not that that's going to rarely come up. That's pretty much never going to come up. But yeah. Yeah, there you go. But that's a nice little thing because we didn't really have anything. We didn't have too many things that gained life. Just a couple of things. So let's see. I was gonna lean in on your screen, but it's probably easier if I just search Meren.
Oh, on like EDA truck.
Yeah. All okay. Right. Yeah. Yep. No, you have. Yeah, you must return it.
Yeah.
So yeah, tortured existence. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to EDH Rec now to see if there's anything that we missed. This is also a good spot for staples because usually I'm not necessarily thinking about those. Okay. Got a lot of these now. There is, I think we only have. The only sacrifice effect we have is Spawning Pit.
It's Spawning Pit.
I don't know if we necessarily want another one of those because that's another thing that like pushes the deck into like hyperdrive.
Yeah.
If we wanted one, like two of the most powerful ones are obviously the mana making ones.
Izoni Thousand Eyes sacrifices another creature. You gain a life and draw a card.
That is true. I'm thinking of a free one.
Oh, a free one. So something like a Carrion Feeder or like a Viserys Seer.
Yeah. Or even a... Yeah. Yeah, those are the two best.
There's a...
Perfect. Okay, so here is a card that I did that I felt like I've missed that I feel like we should add into this deck. That's on EDH Rec. And this is Desecrated Tomb. So Desecrated Tomb is an enchantment for 3. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 bat creature token with flying. And we did just add Tortured Existence. Mm-hmm. So that's another little bonus there.
We have a similar effect of this on a creature as well. Tormod the Desecrated from
That's true.
Commander Legends.
Yep.
Gives us zombies. I don't remember if they come in tapped or not.
I think The zombies?
The
I don't think they
zombies.
do on Tormod.
Tap 2/2 zombies.
Okay, they do.
Ah,
Rats.
rats.
Okay. Let's see if there's
Well, can't.
anything.
We'll take what we can get.
Yeah, take take what we can get. It's true.
I mean, I if I had to guess some of the staples you see on there, I mean, if you want to get really mean, you start getting like Gary.
Yeah, I don't the only one that I'm the only one legitimately that I'm seeing that we missed, other than the cards that are like extremely powerful, is the Desecrated Tomb,
Yep.
which was a good suggestion. And then it comes down to how many mana rocks do we want to play? Um, you know,
Yeah. How
I
much?
don't know the answer to that
Yeah.
question.
It's like, and that's where like you is where you guys are gonna run into your kind of your deck building of like again that subject of safety valving and being like, well, one,
Hmm.
what type of mana is okay?
Yeah.
Um, there's a like I try to play all forms of commander, so I play everything from CDH to just precons. Um, and there are worlds where going mana crypt, jeweled lotus, which I think is a mistake of a magic card, but that's another discussion. Um, is okay. And then there's worlds where like typically most of my commander decks, Soul Ring is kind of my like fastest.
Hmm.
And I think
That's how
we're
I play too.
that's where most commanders should be at because we've kind of grown. And even like Soul Ring is still can be a pretty messed up magic card depending on
Oh,
when it comes
it
out.
definitely is.
It can be a bit of a free lunch depending on how your deck is built. Um, but you can definitely look at it and be like, how fast are people playing? And those are the decisions that maybe like it's pretty safe to go like Soul Ring, Arcane Signet. If you're going more artifacts, you can go Signet, Talisman. Thank God that Talisman cycle got completed. Um,
Yeah.
I think having mixed here is very good. So
Hmm.
like we have the Druids, because if you lean too far in one, when all the artifacts get blown up,
Yep. You're
all
gonna
your
be
mana
sad.
stone. Typically in Commander, I would say this is fair for most people brewing. Lands are pretty safe. There's You're gonna have that one player who likes to mass LD, and as we've discussed, you can build very nasty decks. Then players won't play with you.
Yep.
Um, so lands are pretty safe. Occasional strip mine, wasteland is for me
Yeah.
personally is fine. You got to
Yeah.
answer.
Isolated incidents.
Yeah, you need to answer someone with a Nykthos or
Yeah.
a Guy's Cradle or something
Yep.
like that. Sure, that's fair.
Absolutely.
But I'm also fine with the Ruination. You want to slam that versus me? Totally cool. I'm gonna be running basics anyway. Um, but yeah, no, I think we're actually ramp wise. I think we're fine. We have
Yeah.
Wood
I think
Elves,
so too.
Emissary, Druid. That's three. I mean, Plunder's gonna get insane. Um, Sakura Tribe Elder's a classic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're in good shape. We also have you have my Elder and Seder Wayfinder, which don't put them into play, but they find them. So yeah, I think we're in good shape. So yeah, let's go. Let's move down on the other effects.
Um, the only one I think I would run was like Burnished Heart.
Oh yeah,
Um,
my burn shard's good too. We can certainly add that. It's always good to add a for those effects creatures over not.
yep.
Um, So
Um,
another card I found on EDH Rec as I was going down was actually I forgot this card existed because it's brand new. But Blight Mound is an enchantment for 2 and a black. It says attacking pests you control get +1/+0 and have menace. And whenever a
uh,
non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 black and green pest. So now that's our third effect that gives us tokens when things die. I think we're in good shape for that. Yeah, there it is. Blight Mound on the left. Looks like Megatrauma in chat said Journey to Eternity. I think that's another great suggestion. that gives us
Oh, this one.
gives us so obviously ridiculously easy to trigger in our deck.
That's the I've only played with that's one of the
It's the
Golgari
flip
flip
cards.
one.
Yes.
I I would actually love because I took a break in Magic, and
Hmm.
I missed Ixalan and Kaladesh.
Okay.
Um, and so I never like the only ones out of the set that I've played in Canelander with Search for Azcanta, and a few other ones, but like I've never seen this card. This is actually the first time I think I've read it. Um, so enchant creature you control. When enchant creature dies, return to the battlefield. Then flip this. What does the other side do?
It is a land that you can pay 5 and tap it to return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty solid.
Oh, another flip card. Uh, because MDFCs are a thing. I keep going to the Crypt of the Land. Crypt of Agadines.
Agadeem's Awakening.
That one, yes.
Yeah, that card's great.
That's the mass reanimate, right?
Yeah, 1 for each cost. Yeah, that's certainly a good one to add.
Also counts as a land.
Hmm.
Yeah, this guy. And we have enough different costs, yeah.
Oh yeah, we have multiple 1-drops, so we
Yeah.
definitely got all the costs. We are good. We are good all the way up to like 8. So yeah, as big as you want to go, we are in good shape.
We just got because they keep printing new cards. We just got the new one from Forgotten Realms. The green one. Actually, we
Long
got one.
rest.
Yeah. And we also.
That returns them to your hand.
Oh, it
We
returns
don't
them
do
to
that.
hand. That's right. So
Yeah,
if
we
we
don't
were
want
in
to do
more
that.
ETB stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. What's the deck count? What are we at now?
that would be exactly 100. 65 plus 35 lands.
Okay. Is
Puts
there
us on
anything else that we want to add? If there's any cards, we're getting to the waning moments of the deck.
let's see here. Making sure to glance over at chat. Tormod's gonna be a good one. Uh, poor undergrowth champion. The only time people will see that card these days.
Yeah, he's saying that they're saying that whenever you search undergrowth, that's the
undergrowth.
only
That's the
time
only
that
time you're
people.
gonna see it.
Yeah, kind of sad but true.
I mean, I've played this card before. Oh man. I mean, we cover draw. We cover. There's ramp. We have tutoring and even because there's the argument of you can go nuts with tutoring.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
this.
We
There's so
have
many of
some
them in
we have
Magic
some specific tutoring, but it's all put things to the graveyard.
to the
And
graveyard.
we're really only returning
Yep.
we're mainly returning creatures, so
Yep. I mean, this is a black deck where you're not seeing a demonic tutor, you're not seeing a
mhm.
vampiric tutor, um, and the other thing that blows my mind, uh, it's kind of goofy in Moxfield. I looked at some of my old decks that I had built prior to COVID and prior to some of the price spikes we've recently experienced, etc.
Mhm.
Um, it's hard to build a 100 card singleton deck these days that is below $200. It seems like without
Yeah. I think this is actually an exercise that we do on Commander versus
yep,
semi-frequently. I actually think that it is easier than people give it credit for
yep,
because once you get to the B class of cards,
yeah.
they're generally not very expensive. Like we could make this deck.
Oh, you can make it
We
ridiculously
could make
expensive.
we could make this deck under $200. I feel pretty good about that.
We're under 200. We're at 170.
Okay. Now we haven't added any lands though.
Yeah, but assuming um, if someone was to build this deck and
Yeah.
they just got basics from their shop, which you could do.
Yeah, you
Uh,
could do. I mean, you probably need like 10 non-basic lands and
yeah,
then like 25 basics. Yeah, you could still be under 200. That's true.
yeah. That was just more the thing that blew my mind. Is like, so we're at 65, assuming 35 lanes, and we're at
Hmm.
170. And
Pretty
uh,
good.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
I I mean, lands like, again, that's that kind of pressure valve of like everybody's going to run into of what is acceptable. I'm I'm personal person where I'm fine with Cabal coffers or Borg. Um,
Yeah,
I like
you don't need that here though,
yeah,
you
you don't
know.
need it. I
Here's the
think
lands here's the lands I think you need in this deck.
sure.
Um that are cheap.
Yeah.
Like Phyrexian Tower would be nice, you don't need it. But you have two cards, you have High Market and Grim Backwoods that both sacrifice creatures that are like bulk rares.
Yep.
Um
I
you
love me
have
some high market.
what now?
I love me some high market.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Just going through. I'm on Scryfall now, or not
Yeah,
not
high
Scryfall
market,
on
Grim
on
Brackwoods.
EDH. Yeah, EDH
Um,
rec. Yeah, and you can do if you don't care about the speed of your deck,
yeah.
you can have there's infinite two color come into play tap lands.
Yep.
So yeah,
Um, and that's another thing. Like, at least me personally, I can't stress enough. Like, there's gonna always be that thing where, um, I find, especially when you go into a shop you don't know, you're gonna have that arms race mentality where
yeah,
one person's gonna have something faster and it's gonna prompt another person going faster and it snowballs. Um, you can sort of change that at deck building. Um, build something you enjoy to play, and you will find those groups that like to play at that speed. And it doesn't always
mhm.
have to be like, for example, the green example. You don't need to run the three visits Farseek,
No,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
no, not at all.
Um,
I think your decks are. I mean, and this is just my opinion. People measure fun in different ways, but
yes,
part of the fun for Commander for me is every game is not exactly the same.
yes,
And the more that you have those type of effects, the more that you're going to kind of go to this point where all of your games you're trying to replicate the same game. And I
yep,
think that for some people that is fun and
mm-hmm.
generally that kind of lands on the more competitive side,
Yep,
and that is totally fine. And that's why Commander is such a great format is because you have this wide
wide,
gap of what is an acceptable thing in the format. I know when I'm building my decks, I want them to look more like the deck that we've built today than a deck that is just redundancy after redundancy after redundancy to try to make that same gameplay and happen every single game.
yep. You want to, and I think that's what attracts us all to Commander. Like, it's such a like expressive format. It's not um your legacies or your moderns where like besides some of the niche choices you make, there's a lot of like staples and archetypes that are defined. You can go to a website and be like, I want to look up this theme. Sure. Or you can just look at the cards you have and be like, I want to make
Yeah.
this work.
Hmm.
Um, or I want to do this cool thing. I've heard of people who have like their favorite artist decks. I know you've done the
Oh
episode where
yeah.
you did
Kev
uh,
Walker deck. Yeah.
the Kev Walker deck,
Hmm.
which was super sweet. Because I was looking for inspiration for Shattergang Brothers,
There
and
you go.
stumbled across that one. Um, you'll run into all sorts of cool things, and this is where Commander really lets you show that off. People who have like story decks, people who have art decks, where it's like, oh, this person's in either all the flavor text or all the art.
Hmm.
Um, were there any more lands or?
The only other one that I found that I felt like you definitely want here.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, this just got reprinted, so it's a lot less expensive. But Dryad Arbor is a pretty big plus for Meren, just because it's a creature as well.
Yep.
Um, and you can fetch it with wood elves. So you can fetch a creature with wood elves, which is pretty cool.
Princeton. Time Spiral Remaster, and it's on the list.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, it is way less expensive than it used to be.
Yeah. I was like, when did this just. I glossed over Time Spiral Remastered. That set
Yeah,
hit, disappeared.
it did. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So everything else that I'm looking at as far as these lands, I mean,
and like
I don't think there's anything that's a must.
I love me a Myriad Landscape. They're
Yeah.
cheap. If you're in two color decks, one color decks, they're great because they're slower but pseudo ramp.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, lands, we just fill to what we need.
Yeah.
So there's not a huge decision making there.
Well, lands is a great thing because it's like you can upgrade your mana base over time,
Over
and it's not
time.
gonna. It's
Yeah.
it's you don't need to start day one by getting all like the best possible
Yeah.
lands. It's necessary. I
You
think you get the ones specific for your deck, like the ones that we talked about, the
sure.
ones that sacrifice creatures or are creatures. But the ones, if they're just tapping for mana, just do your best
Yeah.
and you'll figure it out.
Yep.
Start if you have a more than a one color deck. Command Tower is like a quarter now.
Yep.
It's been presented uh, so many times that
Yep.
you know you'll be in good
Um,
shape. So
and you can get there over time.
yeah,
Fetches are at a, I want to say, all time low. I've seen most of the prices, though they're going to slowly rise back up.
this will be their all time low.
Yeah.
If you are interested in getting them, this is the time to do so.
This is yes. So like if you're an invested commander player and you haven't picked those up, and you have a bunch of old stuff that's been sitting around, go see your local LGS.
Yes,
Go
definitely.
talk to Star City. Um, you that could be one of the things where you're like, I'm at this step where I want to upgrade my mana base. Those will help. I will never tell a player that they're 100% necessary, but where we were talking about leading
Yeah.
to more consistencies and stuff, this will push you sort of in that direction. Um, this is solid. This has been
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you very much.
Of course. Of course. Anything you want to touch on before we go?
So I did hint at it when I sent you some of the questions that I'd have a question I was going to
Okay.
keep kind of close to my chest.
Okay.
I'm going to do this with every person I ask on. But so the question I had for you
All right.
is: you're in the situation, you have to film tomorrow for Commander Versus.
Yeah.
It's got to film. Show has to go on, but
Yep. This
Suarez,
sounds like every day.
Green, and Jeremy call out sick.
Okay.
You Magical Christmas Land, you can fill those seats with anyone you want.
Anyone?
Anyone you want? Who are the three people you're filling that table with?
Um, Homer
Okay.
from Command Clash. Uh, Emma Partlow, who was a writer for TCG Player, writes for MTG Rocks right now, is their content coordinator. Does
Okay.
a lot of Pauper content, does a bunch of stuff. And Sungwon Cho, who is Pro ZD on YouTube, voice actor, plays Magic.
Sweet. Awesome. I was like, I'm gonna drop this question and either two things are
Yeah,
gonna happen. You've thought of this before, or like you're gonna freeze up and be like, so
yeah.
that's awesome.
There you go.
I
Those would be the people I've had interactions with Emma and Tomer, um, and Sungwon is one of my favorite content creators, not
mhm.
just for anything. And he plays Magic, and he seems like a super cool dude. So yeah, that'd be it. That'd be my three.
Well,
In fact, if you can make that happen, I'll make Jeremy, John, and Steven sick on purpose. Not permanently, but just like
not
for
permanently,
one
but
episode. Yeah.
I mean, Jeremy's very busy these days, but
Yeah.
um, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for coming on. This has been awesome for me because again, I grew up in the terms of my Commander,
Yeah.
uh, watching Commander versus back in the days of like you and Darby and
Yeah.
Danny
That's
West
awesome.
and um, when Wes Wise was on there, like
Oh yeah.
um,
That's awesome. That's always wonderful to hear.
uh, so this is awesome. If people want to find you, I know some people have gravitated over from you, but anyone who's dropped in here who doesn't know the things you do, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Twitter at jparnell1. You can find my content over at starcitygames.com primarily. I'm the host of Commander Versus, which is I believe we're the longest running Commander live show, or probably just in general on the internet. I'm also the host of the 540, which is a Cube podcast. You can find that on Star City Games as well as anywhere you can find podcasts. And then my personal podcast, Think Twice MTG, which you can just search Think Twice MTG on any place that you can listen to audio recordings or podcasts. And that is a magic and pop culture podcast. So half of it's magic. We talk about anything that comes up magic related and pop culture, TVs, movies, other games, anything in that realm. So that is kind of like my passion project. If you want to impress me, just whoever is listening, tell me that you're a fan of Think Twice and not mention the other ones, and then I'm like, okay, now that's the real one because that's the one I put most of my heart
Mm,
into. Not that I don't put effort into the other ones, uh, but that's my baby. So
well, I mean, this has been awesome. Again, thank you for coming on, and
yeah,
for everybody else, thank you for hanging out. And hopefully next Friday I'll be posting who the next guest will be, um, and we'll catch you all later. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Get out there, play some Commander, and everybody stay safe out there. Have a wonderful time, and thank you again, Justin.
yep. Thanks, Jamie.
All right.